Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav and you join us after the first game of the Championship season as Sunderland went away to Cardiff, went to another country and took 3 points, 2 goals and a clean sheet away from the first game of the season. Fantastic news, of course, and that's why I'm in such a good mood this morning. Joining me is Martin to talk all about this game. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. It's I think if you'd had to write the script for the first game of the season, you probably wouldn't have done too much better than what we saw, really.
Yeah, it's about as good as it gets, isn't it? I think I described it as the perfect away performance. We'll get into it. Obviously, you can always do better, so nothing's quite perfect. But generally, really happy with everything I saw. I think if we're going to have a successful season, that's pretty much the blueprint for how you go away from home, isn't it? You know, soak up the pressure, take your chances. Oh, we didn't take all of our chances, but we took enough of them. Defend really well as a team, look good out of possession, counter-attack when we do have the ball. Just thought, generally, it was a good sign of things to come. And Cardiff are no mugs. They had some good players. You know, you look around the pitch, a lot of experience there. And not just Championship experience, but top level experience when you look at Aaron Ramsey on the pitch and even Callum Chambers, who spent a lot of years at Arsenal and players like that. You know, good side with good players, and I think they'll be okay this season. But good 3 points, as I've said repeatedly. I think we've got to take a lot of pride from that performance and that result. And it really does set us up, doesn't it, for the rest of the games coming up?
It does. And I think the biggest thing out of the whole day on Saturday, really, was that we've got off to a winning start under the new manager.
Yeah.
Because you know what it's like when a new manager comes in and, you know, he's unproven, isn't he? You know, it's not somebody who has won 10 league titles overseas and is coming over to Sunderland to help us get up. He's an unproven quantity as well, and you know we all hope he works out. And for the players and for the fans, I think just getting that 3 points, seeing real evidence of his coaching, like you could see how we set up the tactics that we used, the positions that players took up, the goal that we got from a set piece. They're all evidence of his work. So I think from that perspective, it helps us buy into it. It helps the players buy into it. And really, I think that was such an important 3 points. Because, you know what it's like, if we'd gone away and got tanked 3-0 or 4-0, it immediately puts seeds of doubt into everybody's minds about every single aspect, doesn't it? The striker thing becomes even more of a problem. You know, there would be people waiting to criticise Little. So, look, I think it was perfect. As I say, we couldn't have really written the script better because it showed enough to us that he knows what he's doing in terms of tactical setup and all that sort of stuff. There's an awful lot of improvement that we can get over the course of the season. It wasn't a perfect display. I think even he said himself, didn't he, after the game, he wasn't happy with the amount of possession Cardiff had and he wasn't happy with certain aspects of it. But there was enough there we could see to give us hope and confidence in what he's going to do over the coming months. So I think from that perspective, as I say, I don't really think it could have gone much better.
I agree. I listened to an interview with Dan Neil after the game, and we've heard a lot of these interviews recently with players from the squad. I think I've heard Jack Clarke talk about it, Dan Ballard, Chris Rigg, Adji Elise. There's been quite a lot of player interviews recently where you just get the impression that they're bought into this. I don't know what's gone on behind the scenes to prepare them. And I suppose it's a sign of kind of how much of an impression the new manager's made already, that the players are clearly on board with what he's trying to do, but there's loads of talk about the way we want to play, the way the manager wants them to play. I can't really remember this being a case. It kind of does feel like a full-on PR offensive from the club, actually. We've had a lot of like YouTube videos of showing them training, mic'd up and all these sort of things, but I think it's all positive stuff, and it's a sign that they are buying into what's going on, and I agree with you. We're seeing it play out on the pitch already. I think particularly out of possession, I was really impressed with our shape, really impressed with the way we pressed the ball. I was really impressed with how everyone just seemed to know their jobs on the pitch. This is really basic stuff, but given how badly last season went, it's stuff that wasn't evident last year, and these are largely the same players. And look, there's been a lot of talk about the kind of lack of change in the squad. We haven't signed a lot of players yet, but I think it kind of points to the fact that we already had good players and that with good coaching, you can get more out of them. And fingers crossed, this is just the start of what's to come. The other thing as well, I just want to pick up on what you said, and again, it's something I've noticed from interviews. But it's this aspect of that we still need to improve. It wasn't good enough by their standards. I've heard the manager talk about it after the game. Again, Dan Neil talked about it after the game. I've heard about it again in other interviews and stuff where the players are like looking at it and going, well, it was good, but we still need to improve. We still need to crack on. There's been a lot of that talk as well, where I think that they recognise that it was a brilliant win, but we are so much better than that. And that when we get to the Stadium of Light next week, that I don't think that you could get away with letting the opposition have the ball as much as we did. Particularly, with your own fans. The home crowd aren't going to want to see Chef Wed next week with loads of the ball. They're going to want to see us on the ball. So that's interesting too, that there's another couple of gears we can actually go up here. But the belief's there. A good result does help that, as you mentioned. We've seen it so many times, not just at Sunderland, but at other clubs down the years, where a new manager comes in with these brand new ideas, and if they don't get the results that back up the coaching, they're found out very quickly, because all of a sudden you've created this cult of personality where everybody is buying into your philosophy. But if you're not seeing results on the pitch, the scrutiny's immediately on you. I mean, how many times have we seen it? I kind of remember one of the De Boers took over at Palace a few years ago. Do you remember?
Ah, that's right.
I think they shifted along Roy Hodgson, and they tried to completely shift the attitude of the club and the way they played. And he was sacked after 5 games because.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things you've got to back it up with results. But certainly, I come away with that from that performance with loads of positives to take. Individual performances. I mean, you could go pretty much right through the team. I think other than probably, and I'm not picking them out here, but other than possibly Dan Neil and Mayenda, I would say everybody had like a really solid game. Probably a 7, 8 out of 10 performance from everybody individually. But the most important thing was as a team, collectively, and that includes Mayenda and includes Dan Neil, because when we didn't have the ball, we needed them to press, and they've done a good job of that. I just think it was a good team performance, and it's encouraging.
No, I think you're being a bit harsh on Neil and Mayenda, to be honest.
No, I don't mean to pick them out, but I think, look, if I was being particularly critical, I would say if anybody was slightly weaker, it would maybe be them. But they did okay. I'm certainly not coming away from this and thinking, bloody hell, they were shite. No, there's none of that, because Mayenda sticks that chance away with singing his praises, and I think understandably for Dan Neil, he possibly had a few nerves there, given it's his first game as captain. We've seen him play a load better than that, but he did okay. I am possibly being harsh picking them out, but I mean, my overall point was, as a team, that was just what I want to see away from home. So there's no complaints.
No, it was a good display all round, I think. And I think, I would agree with you to some extent. I think, if you're going to give marks out of 10, I would say Dan Neil and Mayenda might have got 6, whereas the rest of them were 7 and above. What I meant. I think Dan Neil's touch was a little bit sloppy in the early stages, wasn't it? But I actually think Mayenda, this is really interesting, right, in terms of that centre forward position, because who was it spoke? Was it last week or just towards the end of the week? It might have been Dan Neil, and he was saying, as a group of players, they've got to take responsibility for the forwards and strikers last season not scoring as much, because they played the second half of the season before without a striker, and they were so used to doing that they didn't play in a way that enabled the striker to actually score goals. Yeah. Which I thought was it's something that we've talked about, but it's the first time that I've actually heard somebody at the club agree with it. And I think we saw yesterday, in terms of the setup of the team, a system that was actually more focused around playing with a striker and setting the striker up to score. And the striker had a certain role and responsibilities within that build-up. So whether it's, hopefully with the best will in the world, hopefully it's not Mayenda for 46 games throughout the league campaign, because I think it's too much to put onto him. I don't think he's ready for that. I think Labrise said he's not ready for that. But you actually saw in Mayenda's play what a centre forward needs to do in that shape and system for it to work. He was coming off, trying to hold the ball up. He was trying to link play up. Then he was getting on his bike and turning and going and getting to be on that last man. And that's not something that we've really seen too much of last season. We didn't really see the strikers playing in that way with that space around them. There was always more players around them. There was always kind of bunched together. The team had moved up probably as a unit a bit quicker than we saw yesterday. So actually, they've obviously done an awful lot of work on shape during the pre-season, and it is geared to playing with a centre forward. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 2 or 3 weeks in terms of recruitment, because we do need that striking. We talked about it when Lebrie came in. When you look at his pattern of play and his team last season and the last 2 seasons, it relies on an 18-box goal scorer. He's always got one of them who's sniffing around, who's the focus point, who's the target man to put away those chances. So he's obviously brought that sort of system with him. But I actually think Mayenda did all right. He's raw. He should have scored, but I think he was a little bit unlucky because he kind of stumbled when he went through. But we saw Jobe kind of pushing up alongside him at certain points, didn't we? Then Jobe dropping back and Brown pushing up and dropping back. And I think, that shape, it was actually, it reminded me a little bit of Alex Neil when Alex Neil came in, when you could just see that, right, we've got a system, the players got the roles, they know what they're doing, they're well drilled, and you can kind of see that pattern of play.
Yeah, I would say that, just to Mayenda's credit, that, you look at the chance he missed, but he busted a gut to get on the end of it. He was in the right position. And look, how many times last season did we stick someone up there and that wasn't the case? There weren't people busting a gut to get on the end of chances, and there weren't. All right, he's all. I think he struggled a little bit against their centre halves, but that's to be understood again. Him being a 19-year-old kid, they've got like Callum Chambers and us at the back, 2 big lads. There was a few times where the Sky commentator even said, like, a couple of times, that was a foul on him there, and the referees let them get away with it. There was a few times where I think Chambers elbowed him through the back of the head, but that's what experienced defenders are going to do against a young kid. They're going to try and they're going to look at him and go, right, well, he's quick, so I'm just going to batter him and make sure he doesn't come anywhere near us. And there was an element of that, I think against other teams who are maybe a little bit more naive at the back, where there's quite a lot of teams at this level will just try and play out from the back, and they're not good enough to do it. I think Mayenda will come in handy there, but I agree with you. I think over the course of the season, you wouldn't want him to be starting every single game. But for the time being, I'm fine with it. I wasn't against the fact that he started. When it became apparent that, kind of 2 or 3 games into pre-season that he was the choice up top, I wasn't offended by it. I think actually, if you do take the pre-season performances and this one into context altogether, I think as a unit, he's done his part in that team. Whether that be, kind of pressing when we haven't got the ball or whatever, just having that pace to get us forward as well is important, and he'll get better. So whilst, it maybe didn't come off for him in all aspects, I think he's probably going to be a little bit disappointed, particularly didn't score that one chance, but there was another chance, wasn't there, where he cut inside onto his left foot and kind of scuffed at it.
He did.
He'll be disappointed he didn't get a goal, but, it doesn't matter ultimately. We won the game. I mean, we're talking a lot about Mayenda here, but look at the goals we did score. The first one you mentioned, that was brilliant. And I don't know if you heard the manager after the game talking about that, but he actually gave the credit for that to the assistants. I presume, the likes of Dodds, Proctor and whoever else is working on set pieces on the training ground. He gave the credit to those guys. He said it's great when something like that comes off and the assistant can turn around and justify the work he's doing with the team. I thought that was a really good point, because obviously we don't see what they're doing on the training ground. And I think, God, as long as I can remember now, we've been a really bad team when it comes to set pieces. Perhaps because we're not the biggest. I mean, you look around the pitch and other than Jobe, it's not a big team. But you've got to be smart when that's the case. And that's what we were. I think we maybe saw that a couple of times in pre-season too, where the ball was kind of whipped across and somebody was there to head it back across goal. That might become a bit of a trait of ours, because it is very difficult to prevent if you're the defending team. Like, you can set up your wall as well as you want, and you can go man for man, or you can go zonal or whatever. But if the ball in's good, there's not really much you can do about it. And that was the case. We effectively switched the play across the box very quickly, and it meant that we had someone spare on the goal line, and 09 was the man in the right place. But that all came from Patrick Roberts, and that's something I wanted to bring up, because I've been very critical of Roberts, particularly last season, because I just didn't think that he was backing up any of the flair and the flashiness with good performances and tangible results, assists and goals. And he won't get the assist for this one. Cirkin will, because he headed it back across. But it was the ball in that made the goal. Like, you kind of feel bad for him that he doesn't get the assist, don't you? Because it was such a good ball in. And Jack Clarke fakes the run-up, which draws Cardiff out a little bit. And the ball in from Roberts was perfect. And I wanted to bring this up purely because, like I say, we've been very critical of him, but also he's done that quite a bit in pre-season. I think he got 3 assists in pre-season. His deliveries seem a lot more clinical, Like, he's putting the ball in areas where I can actually see us attacking them, rather than just... Under Mowbray in particular, there was a lot of times where Roberts would get the ball on the right wing, jink inside, and he would just sort of hang it up to the back post, and I hate them kinds of crosses. For an attacking player, they're rubbish, because you're basically playing into the hands of the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeper's got plenty of time to time his run, jump, catch it. But this sort of start of the season and then pre-season, Parry Roberts' deliveries have got a lot better, and that's hopefully, fingers crossed, that is a sign of things to come, because God, you could go back to what Tony Mowbray used to say about him. He was his favourite player, wasn't he? Like,
He was.
We all know just how good Roberts can be, but he's at that age now where he's got to back it up. This season's going to have to be a one for him where he really backs up all the hype, all the talk, and he makes some of that flair count, because, if he doesn't, well, he's possibly not going to be here next season, because we'll move on from him, and we've brought in Poveda, and now he's got proper competition in his place. All right, Poveda's not fit, but he will be at some point. And Roberts has got to know that. He's got to know that he's got somebody breathing down his neck, and that when he gets the chance to play, he has to prove himself. And I think he did that here.
I thought he was great, and he's one of those players who we've had for 3 seasons, 4th season now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He's we've all seen what he's capable of in flashes and glimpses, but it's now, as you say, it's now time for him to put it together consistently. I think last season, if you look at it, he had injuries. He was, we all thought he was going to go to Southampton on deadline day. I think that was pretty close to happening, and didn't. I think he's had the birth of a kid. He's had all sorts of things going on the field and off the field that have disrupted him. As you say, Mowbray was a big fan of him. Mowbray leaves. So Roberts has probably had a bit of a broken up season last season, off the field and everything else. So I think if we can get him settled and playing well, and as you say, he's got competition, he is one of the best players in the league potentially in terms of ability. There was a few times where he was running inside, and often we've seen Roberts from that position out wide go down the touchline and try to work it down the touchline, haven't we? But yesterday we saw him coming in to the centre of the field and driving through the actual centre, and then Trey Hume providing the width overlapping them, because we certainly weren't afraid of the fullbacks pushing up to create that width, even when we were 1-0 up with 20 minutes left. And traditionally we would have just sat back and tried to defend that, probably brought Bailey Wright on as sub for the last 10 minutes just to see it out, wouldn't we? But we kept on going forward. That's how the second goal came about. But I think Roberts' free kick I think Jack Clarke had got fouled, hadn't he? Which led to the free kick.
Yeah.
Roberts took the free kick, but it was an outswinger. And as you say, we've often had those in-swinging balls that, to my mind, are a lot easier to defend against. So we had that outswinging ball from Roberts, led to a goal. His work up the line for Mayenda's chance. I know Jobe put the ball across to him, but Roberts' work up the line to get the ball to Jobe in the second half was brilliant for Mayenda's chance.
I suppose it's just like the one that we're talking. It's a bit like the goal, isn't it? That the first goal.
Yeah.
In that, had Mayenda scored, which he probably should have.
The record books wouldn't say Roberts' assist. Yeah.
Yeah, but it should have, because it was such a clever bit of play to get the ball up the Jobe.
And I think, if you look at the players who really excelled yesterday, I think Cirkin had a brilliant game. He just showed what we were missing out on last season, because he is absolutely class. And if he stays fit this season, we'll have a job keeping hold of him if we don't go up, because he is different level.
He made their right back, who I think's possibly their best player. He made him look silly. He just tortured him time after time. Yeah.
And I think he brings more out of Jack Clarke, because he can provide that width for Clarke. He can provide that distraction for the defence that enables Clarke to attack the space that leaves. I think Jobe was superb, and I think again, for a lad of his age, backing up from last season, or he did last season, to produce that performance on the first day of the season. I think there was some stats about he made the most tackles, most chances created, 3 or 4 stats that he was just the leading player for us on. So he's had a great game. You look actually across the pitch, I thought 09 was superb. I thought Trey Hume provided some nice width. And I thought in the first half, especially Alan Brown was brilliant. And he just showed what we've been missing out on centre midfield. He was able to take the ball, but when he got the ball, he wasn't necessarily passing it the way he was facing. He was turning and trying to create a different angle, or trying to create a different direction of play. And that's the sort of midfield player that we've been lacking. And you kind of it's interesting when and we've had the conversation before, haven't we, with our midfield last season, where we go, right, we need a defensive midfield player. It's clear that we need a defensive midfield player in centre forward. Watching Brown and Neil on Saturday against Cardiff, and then considering that you've got Ekwa, Rig, Aushishu could probably come into one of those 8 positions as well. You kind of go, if you signed a first choice defensive midfield player, whose position is he going to take?
Yeah,
like I just don't see it. And going back a few years, you didn't really have defensive midfield players. You had 2 centre midfield players. If one attacked, the other one stayed back. If the other one attacked, the other one stayed back. And I kind of think that with Dan Neil and with Brown, we've probably got players who can do that. Brown was barking orders and organising the team in the second half as well. He was captain of Preston. He's got that leadership about him. And I think he could, the evidence of Saturday, he could be a great addition to the squad, couldn't he? So there was lots of positives to take out of it and so much potential to prove and to realise over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, I just want to touch on Jobe because you mentioned him, but would you agree that possibly his best game for us? Like 90-minute performance?
I think it was his best all-round game, over the course of 90 minutes for consistency. Because, again, he's a player who we've seen lots of good bits and flashes, but, it wouldn't be harsh to say that in a number of games last season, he would go missing for 20 minutes and come back into the game. And, I thought yesterday against Cardiff, he was involved all the way through. And whether that's because he had a clearer position to play and clearer instruction, because, again, you could see very clearly, couldn't you, that what his role was on the ball, what his role was off the ball, what his role was when we didn't have the ball, and what his role was when, as a team, we had the ball. So, I think he probably benefited from having that. But, the chasing back to win the ball for Clarke's goal just typified his performance. I thought he never stopped.
Did you?
And to do that, at that stage of the game, and to have the energy to still do that at that stage of the game, I thought was superb. And that, I think Labrie talked about it, didn't he, actually, after the game, in terms of that team spirit and wanting to work for your teammates and wanting to put that effort in. And if he can get that into the team as well, then that's massive, isn't it? Again, we've seen from different players and different teams over the course of the last decade, we've seen certain players just write it in and not put that effort in for the teammates. If everybody's playing as a one unit, it's promising.
Oh God, yeah, and I think with Jobe in particular, he gets a lot of really, really harsh, unfair criticism. I think people expect him just to be better than he is because I think probably because of who he is. And that's it's harsh. You've got to judge him on his performances, but also on his age. He's a kid. I talked before about Mayenda being 19 and being a little bit green behind the gills or whatever. You look at Jobe, he's a baby too.
Yeah.
But he plays quite, there's quite more often than not with Jobe. I think with him, he's more mature than he's given credit for. And that tackle was outstanding. I watched it back. The more I watch it back, the better it gets.
Yeah.
Because their lad, I think if he skips that tackle, he's possibly away and, it could be a different game. He wins the ball back, and as a unit, we just charge forward, and and then Clarke does what he does. Nobody needs me to describe that goal because we've seen him do it how many times now. But you're right when you kind of compare, particularly the second half of last season, that element was missing from particularly the midfield, where we would just go missing. There would be this big gap between the attack and the defence, and loads of times we got done on the turnover, and the midfield was anonymous, and teams would just walk through us. And it wasn't because I think the players weren't committed. I think sometimes in younger players that element's not there. And we talk a lot about experience, and there was a lot of criticism for how much exposure Jobe got last season, but he will have benefited from playing as much as he did. We'll see a better version of him because of how much football he played, and it'll be those little elements where you pick on, fair enough, that's something he maybe wasn't doing last year. So I mean, we owe that goal really to him. I know Clarke's individual quality is what gave us the 2-0 win and the final goal and the celebrations and all that. But that doesn't happen without Jobe charging back, winning the ball, and then putting it on a plate to him. yeah, I think come the end of the season across 40 odd games, it'll be those little moments in games, in every game, which really define whether we finish high or are kind of in the middle of the pack again.
No, that's exactly right. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you said earlier on that, some people have been disappointed about the lack of signings that we've made. But, if you look at the squad that we've got, and you look at what we've seen, again, over the past decade, 15 years, we've often brought in 9, 10, 12 summer signings. Then the following summer, you're desperate to get rid of 9, 10 or 11 of them because they haven't actually done anything. And I always think the sign of a badly run or badly organised club is having to make that many signings during transfer window. Because if you've got a good group of players who are developing and getting better, and who are there for the longer term and who are settled, you should only need to add 2 or 3 into the team. If you're adding more than 3 players into the first 11, it's quite a huge disruption. So in terms of continuity, you actually don't want to be in a position where you're having to make 5, 6, 7 signings for the first team. And a lot of the talk like that kind of overlooks the fact that these players, because of their age, aren't the finished product and will be improving, every week, every month. But, once they've had a rest over pre-season and got back into the new season, that difference in terms of levels of ability is potentially quite significant from what we saw last season to this season. More so than it would be with Patrick Roberts, for example, or some older players. So the likes of Jobe could very well take a significant step up in performance. Dan Neil could take a significant step up. Trey Hume could. We've got all of these, Ballard, right? We've got all of these players who are still pretty young, who can take a good step up. Now, whether Jobe can keep that up for a full season or not, who knows? Let's hope he can. But I think, as an individual performance, an individual 90 minutes, that was the best that we've seen from him in the Sunderland shirt. And, we've got Chris Rigg, who's breathing down his neck for a game, haven't we? And I think if Rigg this season has the same level of performance and same performances as Jobe did last season, we'll all be singing his praises. If Chris Rigg scored the goals that Jobe scored last season, and the match winner against Leeds and all that sort of stuff, we'll end up singing Rigg's praises. So yeah, I think Jobe does get some unfair criticism, and whether it's because of his brother or whether it's because he come from Birmingham with Speakman and Mike Dodds or what have you, I don't know. But let's hope that what we saw against Cardiff is what we'll kind of see more often than not over the course of this campaign.
Yes, should we do a handful of questions for the last 5 minutes or so? We've got quite a few coming from Twitter. Quickfire. Let's see if we can actually... That has to be our goal for this season, by the way. When I say quickfire questions, let's make them quickfire, because we never do. I always start by saying this, and then we end up giving 20-minute long answers to questions. We'll start off with this one from Dale Robson. 09 was top class again. I think I'd agree there. He said, why was/is he never considered for the holding midfield role? 2-footed, can pass and defend. Seems a perfect Evans replacement if we need more steel in midfield, especially when Ballard is back fit at centre-back. Discuss. I actually agree with that. I think at some point we might see him in there. But for the time being, keep him at centre-half. He was champion there.
Well, I thought he was great against Cardiff. I think the way he brought the ball out of defence was obviously a big part of the tactics that we are deploying. And I don't think we've got another centre-half who can do what he does in that respect. What I will say, which is interesting, is on the website, he's listed as a midfield player.
Yeah, so someone in the media team wants to move him there then.
Someone in the media team wants him in midfield as well.
Jack Thomas Robson says, how many more signings do you think we need to really push for those promotion spots? He says 3 or 4. I would say 2 strikers and a centre-half. At least.
I would say 2. I would completely agree with you. 2 strikers, central defender, and potentially a midfield player, just to add a bit more competition. And that's if nobody else leaves.
Yeah. I think, obviously the important one is the strikers, but I see a centre-half after we've praised the defence repeatedly, just because I don't think we can rely on the fitness of the lads we've got, and I'm not convinced by the players we've got in backup. Like if Ballard or 09 or Elise got injured, you'd then be calling upon Hjelde and Sealt. Well, Sealt's injured, isn't he? Triantis, Johnson even. It's like there is a drop-off in quality there. Michael Bowers says, how high is the ceiling of this team with a good forward, especially if Clarke somehow ends up staying? I think top 6 is probably the season. I think is the ceiling. I think we can definitely get in there, given I think this is a more even league. I listened to somebody on Sky say this yesterday, that there's no real outstanding team in the division now. Yes, 3 teams have come down with Premier League resources, but I don't look at anybody and think they're going to blow the league away.
No, that's right. And I think, again, if you add a 15, 20 goal a season striker into that side, if we can keep everybody fit, again, top 6 is not beyond the realms of possibility at all. And, the other thing to consider, if we do get, 7 points from the first 3 games, 9, 10 points from the first 4 games, and we're up there towards the top end of the table on transfer deadline day, it adds to the attraction of somebody joining the club, doesn't it? If they join a team that's won the first 3 or 4 games and who's pushing at the top already. So yeah, hopefully, I think we've talked about this, haven't we, in terms of like the ceiling for the group of players that we've got. It's pretty high, and we don't actually know how high it is because some of them have the potential to go all the way to the top, I think.
Yeah. Chris Wilkinson says, beating the Cardiffs of this league will help us motor on up to a playoff spot. How many Cardiffs can this team beat this season? Well, I think that remains to be seen, but it's a good sign that, because how many times last season did we struggle away from home against? Although I did say before, I think Cardiff will be all right this season. I look at their squad and I don't think it's going to be a playoff contender, but I think they'll be okay. They've got some canny players. It's a big if, but if you can keep Chambers and Ramsey fit, they're 2 of the most experienced, certainly in terms of outside of the Championship players in the league.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of quality there. I thought they made changes, that players who came on made a difference. Like, if they put their chances away, they would have probably deserved to win the game, because I thought over the 90 minutes, they did have the majority of the ball and they created good chances. So, like, I wouldn't write Cardiff off. I think they might give a lot of teams a tough game this season. But I think it's certainly a good sign that we were able to go there and win and get a clean sheet. That's another thing. Like, not coming. How many times did we concede goals last season against anybody?
No, the only thing I'll say is, like, the one team that we beat in that run at the end of the season under Mike Dodds was Cardiff away. So I think, we take the 3 points. Let's not get carried away with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think Cardiff were only a point ahead of us last season. They finished ahead of us, but only maybe a point above us. And I think they'll be around that mid-table position again. I don't think they'll get in the top 6. But I don't think they'll go. I know some people have sort of talked about them being one of the favourites to be in that sort of bottom 3, haven't they? But I don't think they will be. Just, as I say, because of the experience that they've got in the team. Yeah,
a couple more. Graham Brown says, would anyone take Tom Cannon on loan from Leicester for the season? I mean, I'd take anyone at this stage, but...
you take him on loan, I'd rather sign him.
Yeah, that's the thing. My mate said this in our group chat yesterday, talking about how apparently there's rumours that Ross Stewart could go out on loan from Southampton. And I was like, well, as much as I love him, and I think, he could do a job if he was fit, it's loaning somebody that I'm not comfortable with. I think we need we need to sign somebody, don't we?
I'd rather he came here than go to Leeds or something, though.
Well, that's true, yeah. Rather than him strengthen someone else.
The other one, which I know it's a really obvious one after the games on Saturday, but Madja, like, he's exactly the sort of centre forward we need, and West Brom have financial trouble. Like, I'd be chucking a bid in for him if he's back fit. Well, he'd probably like to play alongside Ballard as well.
After a hat-trick on the opening day, he's probably just doubled his value, though, the way the things work in the Championship. Have we just played the favourites for the drop, said Will Douglas. I've just been saying they're all right. He said they were terrible, or did our tactics make them look bad?
I didn't think they were terrible. I thought they played the ball around quite nice. I think they just lacked that cutting edge. But I think, some of the forwards that they've got, Willock, I thought was pretty impressive, and O'Dowd down the left-hand side. I think the striker that they brought on, their new signing, looked a handful. And I think when he gets fit, he'll be all right. So I think they'll be mid-table pretty comfortably. I said I don't think they'll challenge the top 6, but I don't think they'll be getting relegated.
Last one, Peter Harden says, thoughts on Sunderland doing the same as Luton and keeping our kit for another season next year? Don't be daft. You see how much money they've made?
Not when they can make as much money as they have done already this season.
It's not going to happen, mate. Don't get your hopes up.
Tell you, like, on that point though, I think Luton deserve an awful lot of credit for doing that. And when I was a lad, I used to buy a football shirt, used to buy the Sunderland shirt, and we had it for if not 2 seasons, 3 seasons.
That was before they realised how much money they could make from
well, that's right,
creating 3, 4. Some teams have more. Don't I think that likes of Man City and they have like a European kit as well. They They just release more and more kit. And then you get the retro ones on top of that, and they're not daft, they're out to make money.
Oh, you can see why they do it, but I think, in terms of making football affordable and all that sort of stuff, it would be nice if we kept at least one of the kits for more than one season. You could make the away kit the third kit, couldn't you, for
it's not going to happen.
I know it's not going to happen.
When it's been like printing money making these Hummel kits, they'd be like. Let's be honest. If you're thinking like them, they're not going to do that. Right, we're done. We haven't even mentioned the fact we play Preston, but we'll probably be back with a pod between Preston and the weekend, kind of catching up on the cup game and looking ahead to what will happen on Sunday. It's Sunday we play, isn't it, against Chef Wed?
It is.
These bloody Sky kickoffs are going to be messing with our fixtures all season, aren't they, unfortunately?
Midday, isn't it?
Yeah. So we'll be back with a pod between those two games, chatting about everything. Thanks very much for joining us. Cheers, Martin. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers now.
Cheers to the listeners. Like I say, we'll be back. Make sure you catch up with everything on rokerreport.sbnation.com through the week. Plenty of reaction and opinions and news and all that other good stuff coming up on the website, across the social channels as well. Make sure you follow Roker Report on whatever platform you choose to use, unless it's Threads, because I gave up on that a long time ago because nobody seems to be active on there. But everything else we're there, so make sure you follow us, and we'll see you on the next one.